Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we're discussing how to talk to your kids about polarizing politics. Here with us today is Robbin McManne. First off, Robin, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Robin is a parent coach with the top 20 parenting podcasts in the US, UK, and Canada. She's also the author of the book, The Yelling Cure, which focuses on minimizing stress and fostering understanding and connection with children. Robin is a renowned voice in working with parents and kids on their connections and relationships.
Mm.
We're really excited to have you here. And to our viewers, please feel free to ask any questions or drop any comments that you have in the comment section, and we will try to get to as many as we can today. But let's jump right in.
For
Um,
this.
my first question, Robin, is thinking over right now and the moment we're in, but then also over the past 4 years, or even more so, going back to the last election. How do you talk to your children about the bad behavior and the
Mm.
bullying that we've been seeing by politicians? They're supposed to be role models. And at least growing up, I was like, oh, I was told, yes, we're electing these leaders and we have these expectations. But now, as a grown up, and it's my job to talk to my kids, like, oh, yes, we're electing these leaders and they're going to set the example. And then I'm horrified by some of the things that I'm seeing. Um, how do we handle this as parents?
It's definitely tough. And what I want parents to know first and foremost is you are the leaders in your family and your kids are looking to you first and foremost for how to act, what to believe, what to say. So as much as that over there with the political picture is can be very volatile,
Mhm.
just know that the most important influence in your kids' lives is you as parents. But then, of course, they are tuned into what's going on. And depending on how you consume your news and that sort of thing, some people have the news on all the time, right? Because we're in an age now where news is 24/7. And kids are asking questions, they're tuning into this. And so I think what we need to do is we need to really boil these down to simple subjects, right? So bullying or bad behavior, right? And talk to your kids about it. So, if you see, they're going to ask you a question, let's
Mhm.
say. Um, so ask them, well, what do you think? What do you think that means?
Mhm.
How do you feel about that? What would you do? This is a really great time to learn about what your kids know. And I would wait a minute before you get into a lecture and just start asking open-ended questions to find out what they know, because we don't know what they know, but
Mhm.
we know that they're talking about it in school, they're talking about it with friends, right?
Mhm.
Depending on what their ages are, they're getting into deep conversations, some of them. So I would really boil it down and say, hey, okay, the person is separate from behavior.
Mhm.
Sometimes people do have bad behavior, but it doesn't mean they're a bad person. All we can do is really control who we are as people, and our values in our family are this, and this,
Mhm.
right? And that although we don't condone that behavior, we can also see that sometimes people act certain ways because of different things, because they're worried, they're scared, different things like that, and we kind of go on attack sometimes, and especially in this political environment, there's a lot of that going on right now, and
Mhm.
sometimes pressure makes people do things that aren't very nice. Sometimes when people are scared and we react in fear, we don't make the best decisions too, right?
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense to bring it back to your family household or your family unit and say, like, okay, these are the values that we hold. And, but then even bring it back to the individual. These are the choices that we can make. And really, the only behavior that, or the biggest change that we can make is our own behavior and that we can control our behavior. And so that's what we want to focus on in this family. Um, but it sounds like, jumping into those conversations, right? And you're saying it is really important to talk to your children about what they're seeing and have those hard conversations because, you know, especially with little children, and then even as they get older, we want to be part of that. We want to be parents that are jumping
Yeah.
in and helping them guide these these decisions and their thought process as well.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think we have to take the high road, even though that's hard. We have to take the high road. You know what I mean? Like we do.
right, right.
Let's not get into the thick of it. Like leave those conversations for adults.
Mhm,
You can say all of the terrible things you want to say, and pick the everybody apart. But let's, with our kids, try. And I know it's not easy, but try to model the high road. Try to have a mature conversation with your kids, and use this as a teachable moment. I think it's a
mhm.
really awesome subject to talk about, right? And
Yeah.
it's something they're gonna, talking to them about how it is, how our government is set up, and
Mhm,
all of those things. Like, what is it to have a democracy? This is a big conversation, and just,
mhm.
we're not talking just one conversation. This can go on, over the course of many different conversations too.
Right, absolutely. Um, how so we've been talking a little bit about, what how do you handle these actions that we're seeing? But then thinking about not just the politicians that we're seeing, but our fellow citizens, whether those be strangers or family members. How, as
Mhm.
parents, do we handle talking to our kids about people who have a different viewpoint than our own?
Yeah. Again, this is where we really need to take the high road,
Mhm,
and try to be as neutral as we can. And I think that one of the things that we can say to our kids is, look, there's more than one path to the result we're looking for, right? And at the end of the day, both candidates, care about some similarities, which are, we care about the people, we care about the economy, and that's really important. So what I'm trying to say is, can we find some common ground that we can agree on, and go and just stay there,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
That agree that, look, your candidate may not be my candidate, but I can agree that they both want the best for the country, the people, the economy, right? So
mhm,
let's just stay there.
mhm,
Even though I know it's not easy, right?
mhm. Yeah. It's definitely not easy.
No.
Um,
And can I say one
yeah,
more thing too?
definitely.
The thing is that in this day and age, we're going to disagree. But isn't it okay to disagree? Can't we have a conversation where we're not on the same side, but it doesn't mean that you're my enemy?
Mhm,
It doesn't. It doesn't. And let's not make it mean that much. Let's not make it mean that much. We have a difference of opinion, but I know you're a good person. I'm a good person.
mhm,
We care. And so let's focus on that we both care, and we both have different ideas, and we both have different values, but it doesn't mean that we can't be friends. It doesn't mean that we can't, that we have to be enemies. It doesn't mean that, and I think
mhm,
that's a really important lesson to teach our kids too, right? That we can have discussions where we are not aligned, and that's okay. We can
mhm,
agree to disagree.
mhm. Yeah, and I think one of the challenges is right now, because there is so much polarization, we feel that people are so far away from where we stand. It
Mhm.
is it is easy to say, no, I want nothing to do with that person or their ideas, or they really go against what I believe in. Um, but what you're saying, which I think is really refreshing, is to say no matter who this person is, no matter how awful you may think they are on the inside, it is so important that we take our values and of respect and love, and that we treat everyone with
Mhm.
that kindness,
Mhm.
and that hate is really not an option. And I think, as for adults, to be able to do that and then show your kids, hey, this we treat everyone with respect. I think that's a really important reminder, um, that no matter what the disagreement is, you just have to disagree in a respectful way.
Yeah, and let's not forget about curiosity too.
Mm.
Like, why can't we ask the other person, okay, well, how come you do believe that way? And most of the time when we ask questions, they're statements in disguise, or it's like a challenge. But what if, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we were to just ask a question, or ask questions, and say, okay, tell me more,
Uh-huh.
and then listen and zip it. Like, let's be quiet. Let's really listen. Let's really listen for understanding, not to respond,
Mhm.
not to defend our position. Like, let's just listen and ask why, because you might learn something that you didn't know.
Right. Right. And kids
right?
are so good at being curious and asking questions.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we all need a little bit of a lesson in listening, both
Yeah.
children and adults, of just to be like, okay, let's sit here and take a moment to really listen and think about what the other person is saying. So I think that's a great reminder. So I think another within the same line of conversation about viewpoints and differing viewpoints, what do you do as a parent if your viewpoint is different from your child's viewpoint and you find a lot of internal conflict within your own household? How should parents handle that? Because you don't want to say, "Oh, I don't want you involved in politics or the political process," or you don't want to squash their
No.
their joy and their activism or whatever direction they're headed in. But that could be a really hard thing for a parent to handle. What should parents do if that's the situation?
Well, I think there's two things. Okay, for one, and I'm going to answer the question in the second half here. One is if your child is really that interested in politics and the election, like how cool is that? So first and foremost, let's cultivate that excitement or that interest, right? Let's talk about how they can make a difference in their community. Like if you are this passionate about this election, like what can we do in your school? What can we do in the community where you can make a difference? We know there are kids making differences and they have a voice. So I think it's really a great opportunity to say, hey, this is great. You're passionate and your voice matters. In fact, you can create change in our community, in your school, and in and amongst the people who are in your circle of influence. So that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Second, if they have a different opinion from you, and I actually I remember having a conversation with my dad, who it would be a Republican where I would be a Democrat. And we actually were talking about the election before Obama was elected.
Mm-hmm.
And we had very different opinions. And he actually, for one of the first times in his life, listened to me. And I told him what it was that I thought, and he listened. And I think that's all you need to do is just listen. And I know it sounds like a broken record, but really like, okay, tell me more. How come you believe that candidate is better? Let's talk about it. And I don't see any reason why we need to take that as a threat
Mm-hmm.
or we need to be fearful of that. Let's let our kids explore and learn on their own. If they're on the opposite side of you, I mean, let's not take that personally. That's not personal, right? And that's what we do, I think, too,
Mm-hmm.
is we take it personally and then we feel like we need to fight to get them on our side. But let's just learn from them. And can you imagine how cool it would be for a kid to even change the mind of their parent? Wouldn't that be like, that is powerful? The most important people in my life, I can talk to them and make a difference in the way they think. Whoa, that is cool.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so as you know, I think it's really different from when we were kids, but social media now is such a powerful tool. And like here we are right now on Facebook Live,
Yeah.
having this conversation over Zoom, and that's just the world we live in. So it's really different from when we were kids.
Yes.
Um, so I don't feel like we have a great frame of reference onto how do we
Mhm.
handle the role of social media
Mhm.
and our children and politics. It's sort of this interesting stew right now.
Yeah.
So how do you take control? And maybe that's even the wrong word to use, but how do you take control of social media's influence on your child's opinions? Or how do you at least handle that messy stew that is social
Yeah,
media
yeah.
posts and your
It
family?
is, and it's pretty tough this year, this
Right,
season, because of how volatile things have gotten.
right.
And I think this is where we talk to our kids about where we consume our information
Hmm.
and talk to them about the fact that there is misinformation out there, that there are biased news sources. So also encourage them to question things like, does that sound true? Do
Hmm.
you think that would happen? Let's find out if that's true. So encouraging them to check the information, to question the information, and to find non-biased sources. So I had John Schallman on my podcast, Parenting Our Future, and he's a political expert commentator, and he was talking about the League of Women Voters,
Mm,
that they have a site that is a neutral site. So that he brought that to my attention. I didn't know, and so they will put nonpartisan information out there. So getting kind of back to the social media piece, I would really talk to your kids and say, look, social media is being used for some sort of nefarious purposes by either side, and maybe that's not the best place for us to consume our news. In
mhm.
fact, it really isn't the best place. It's maybe the worst place. So let's not
Right.
go there, except for conversations like this, of course. But like, let's go to reputable sources where we can get real information that's quality information. Don't forget to challenge it, question it, and and fact check it. It's
Mhm.
important.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like a great teachable moment to talk about critical thinking and when you should sort of slow down and say, "Hey, like this seems kind of funny. Let's check it out." Or even like, "I'm about to repost this or retweet or
Yes.
whatever." Oh, let's make sure we make sure it's a truth, or it's
Yeah.
grounded, it's coming from a good source, or it's grounded in reality. I think that's a good reminder.
And maybe even tell them, look, you know what? I did it too. I reposted something and I didn't even realize it. I've learned my lesson, learn from me.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. Um, what should you do if your child is getting picked on or even bullied about their or for their beliefs? How should parents handle that?
You know, I think that's really tough, right? And I think that it comes down to finding that middle ground, finding, look, what can we agree on? And again, it's okay to disagree. Let's not engage in the low level stuff. Let's not engage in pettiness. Try to take the high road too. And again, I think using all of those same skills, like, okay, well, how come you believe in this candidate? And look, I know that's a lot to ask kids to do, but we need to model that too, right? And if someone's getting picked on, look, this is, I think a way to diffuse it is just say, yeah, well, you might be right. Or, you know what? I guess we'll see.
Mhm.
Like, there's ways to shut it down, but if we keep fighting with the other person too, we just continue to give them fuel for the fire.
Mhm.
And if they're really being picked on, that is a different issue too, right? We want to talk to the school, we want to talk to the parents, and deal with a bullying issue too. But I really do believe that if we boil it down to the fundamentals, that look, both sides want the best for the country, the people, the economy, like I've already said, and more. And if we can just say, hey, look, you know what, everybody's trying to do their best, and that we can agree on, right? Let's stay there. Let's
Mhm.
stay there.
I like too the way that you suggested just quick one-liner, shut them down. The you might be right or we'll see. And I think it empowers kids to be able to kindly walk away from a situation and sort of like this hopefully is a quick diffuse. I'm going to say this and then I can walk away.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that can be a helpful tool.
Yeah, I hope so.
Um, yeah, and I think that should be able to transfer to social media as well. What do you think about that? Is that something that you feel like, because I think that's really where a lot of these arguments, at least especially now with the pandemic, that we don't have quite as many in-person interactions. If some of this
Yeah.
fighting is happening online, do you suggest the same thing, just these quick sort of one-liners, and then be able to disengage?
Yeah, definitely. Or stay away from it altogether.
Mm,
Depending on, I mean, I personally stay away from the conversation altogether,
mhm.
because I don't want that. And look, being in the public myself, and I have ads on Facebook. I mean, I have seen hate
Right.
come my way, and different things, and it certainly doesn't feel good. I think that really, it's, if you're going to post something, I mean, just be aware, right? Be aware, but also recognize that it's never personal. I don't believe that when people are on the attack, that it's ever personal. It's never really about you, because if you go back to the actual person, underlying the rudeness, maybe the meanness, the vitriol is fear.
Mm-hmm.
This is a scared person. They're
Mm-hmm.
worried. And this is a time where people are really worried and they're stressed. And if we were just dealing with a pandemic, or sorry, the election now, never mind the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah. Um, Plus other things. I mean, this has been the weirdest year on record, right? Now we're talking about an asteroid. We're talking about murder hornets. I mean, come on,
Why
like,
not?
why not? So, I mean, I just think that like everybody, there is this collective pain body. Everybody is feeling stressed.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are in fear, we do not make good decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And we react. And if we're activated and you don't know what was going on in that moment with that person when they said that mean thing,
Mm-hmm.
so let's not take things personally either, and really when it comes down to it, who you vote for really is private,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's been one of those taboos forever. We don't talk about money, we don't talk about politics, and sex, those kind of taboo conversations. So like we don't need to broadcast it all the time
Mm-hmm.
either, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so with that, with all this conflict, how do you handle talking about the conflict that's surrounding the elections in the United States? How do you have those conversations with your kids? That
Well,
so many adults are in these really
yeah.
challenging situations, and that we are starting to see, violence this year, maybe more than we've seen before. At least it's being publicized in a way that it hasn't been before.
Yeah. So with adults, arguing amongst each other, I think that, for us to point out, people are really passionate.
Mm,
People are really concerned. There are so many people that want to see changes.
mhm,
And we have in this country the right to speak our minds. And that's what people are doing right now. They are embracing the right to have free speech. And so, but let's remind them who we are in this family, right? We honor other people's words, thoughts, and opinions, if that's your family value, which is a great family value to have. That people are scared, people are worried, and that's why they may be fighting more than you see. And that if we look at the candidates, they're just really passionate about the way they see the future of the country, and they're fighting for votes, right? And that does bring up fear in people. That does can make people angry. And especially with the two candidates, again, like this is a volatile situation, right? And in terms of the violence, I mean, we've got to talk to our kids and say, hey, listen, we are allowed to speak our voice, but when we're violent, we've lost the point that we're trying to make. Nobody's listening when there's violence, and that's when it's gone too far. That's
mhm,
when fear has turned to rage, anger, and we're no longer talking anymore. But if we stay in the conversation, there won't be violence. But I think that it's also important for parents to know, and this might be a next question for you. So I'm sorry if I'm jumping
no,
ahead,
please.
but really just look, the reality is the election day is going to come and go. We don't know if there's going to be a clear winner or not. And regardless, people may go to the streets, and there may be protests, there may be rallies, there may be different things. And we just need to be aware of that. And, in your community, are you safe? Are your kids going to be safe? Are you in the path of a march or a whatever? Like, let's just make sure we keep our family safe and we're aware and we're thinking ahead to what may or may not happen. I think we've got to prepare ourselves mentally for that too.
Mhm, mhm. Um, how do you, so let's say we have a student or a kid, a child who is politically active or someone who's really excited about a cause. How do we support that child um, in that pursuit? Because we were discussing before, like, oh, how lucky if you are a parent who does have a kid who's really jazzed to talk about politics or is really excited about government and the election cycles. How do we help our kids continue that excitement, and not get bogged down in some of the really negative stuff that's going on right now?
Yeah. So I think in terms of their own interest, showing them that, look, you can join debate club, you can be
Mhm.
part of student council, right? Is there something in our community that you feel really passionate about? And show them who's the mayor, who's the city council. Talk about the different levels of government too, right? That's, something really important to talk about. And also, show them, I have to remember her name. Um, sorry, Greta Thunberg,
Mm,
who
mhm, mhm.
Swedish teenager, right? Who has this environmental movement that was around the world. So let's look at other young mentors who are doing this, who have done this, who are making changes in the world. And if they're that passionate, what changes do they want to see in the world? What could they do? Are they passionate about the environment? Well, what does that mean? What does that mean for our family first, and then what does that mean for the community? Like, it's got to start at home first,
Mhm, mhm.
right? And then, are you also asking about how do we encourage them politically in terms of the family and the discussions that we're having as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that we just keep having those conversations. We just keep saying, okay, what have you learned today? What do you think about that? Oh, that's so interesting. Tell me more.
Mhm,
Be there for your kids to listen to them
mhm.
and share with them your opinions. But the a conversation killer is a is really when you are getting into a lecture with your kids. Nobody listens in a lecture. Lectures do not lead to transformed views and new behavior. They don't.
Right.
Zip it and listen. This is
Yeah.
my best advice. Really, we talk too much. We talk too
Mhm,
much, and we just need to listen more, ask those open ended questions, and just to see what they believe and why.
mhm. What about if things don't go the way that your child is hoping? So, whether that be if we're talking about the upcoming election and their candidate loses, or even if there's a particular bill that maybe they were out in the streets protesting for, or trying to get a petition signed. What happens if things don't go their way? How do we as parents support our kids to not
Yeah.
lose faith in the process or the system?
Well, and yeah, and that would be a really hard lesson to learn. And we have to recognize that that's part of the process. That's what it is to live in a democracy. And that, more people who want something on this side will, if there's more people on this side who want this thing, then they're the ones that will get it, right? That it's the power of numbers, and that all we can do is make sure we vote.
Mhm,
All we can do is what we can do. And the rest has to be up to everybody else. And unfortunately, sometimes we are disappointed. And then I think we need to call out those feelings. Like, I am feeling really disappointed. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling worried, and I'm feeling scared.
mhm,
Talk about those feelings, normalize those feelings so they don't just turn into fear. There's more than just that, right? It is disappointment, it is worry, it's maybe feeling trapped. All of those different emotions are valid, and it's
mhm,
okay to feel a sense of mourning or or worry. It's okay. But also, we've got to say, okay, now what? Now what are we going to do? We may not like the results, so what does that mean? What does
mhm,
that mean? How can we move forward in a way that is still positive and in a way that is still helpful to us, to our family, to our
mhm.
community?
Mhm. Absolutely. I have sort of one more question, and it's kind of a big one, but I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. So here we are, two white ladies talking about
Yeah.
this upcoming election, and as parents, yes, we've been in a pandemic, but we've also been in this incredible time of social change, particularly around race. So
Yeah.
thinking about some of this conflict and some of this fear that's surrounding this election on really both sides. um how how do you have this conversation with your kids about power and privilege, specifically around the election? And I think, and how does that vary depending on if you are a white parent talking to your white child versus a family of color, or a biracial family who might have a really different perspective and background to bring to the conversation?
Whew.
I know.
That's a big,
Bam.
yeah, and go. Okay, so okay, I know what you're talking about, and I know what you mean, and I don't think it's easy.
Right.
And I think that there is a call to action for white people to understand, if we don't already understand, that we do have privilege
Mhm.
because we are white. And I know the word Karen is being thrown around a lot and all that kind of stuff. And here's the thing. And I actually I interviewed somebody else. She's another white woman,
Mhm.
incidentally, but just on white privilege. Like, what is that? What does it mean? And so people get really hot under the collar when we say white privilege, and I understand that. And I want to just say, I'm going to divert for a moment just to explain this. And so I didn't realize what it was to have white privilege.
Mhm.
I didn't understand it at all. And so having this conversation really helped me. So, one of the things that I think of myself as is a really open, loving human being. I love people from all backgrounds, race, religion. To me, it's the person, the human, not all of the other stuff.
Mhm.
However, what I didn't realize is I was making some mistakes. And those would be, when my boys were little, we'd have like the little people dolls. I remember my mother-in-law coming over, and she had, talking about like, oh, there's the brown baby or the brown doll. And I was like, oh, no, no, like, we don't want to talk about that, because I don't want my kids
Mhm.
to see color. I don't want them to see
Right, right,
race. Right. And this lovely guest that I had, her name is Jen Lumenland. She said, and that's your white privilege. I was like, really? I didn't know it was my white. What do you mean? And she said, because you are a white woman, you don't have to talk about race, but every other person does. And a friend of mine adopted a boy from Ethiopia, and she tells him, look, you at some point you are not going to be able to, and he's a black boy, to wear a hoodie with the hood up and run down the street. People are going to think that you're doing something wrong. And that's not a conversation I will ever have to have with my boys. Right. And so that's white privilege. Right. So let's just be real about what it is and clear about what it is.
right.
And so I think that, it's okay to talk to our kids about that. Right. And to boil it down to, again, the most simplified things, don't you believe that everyone's lives matter? You know, my life matters, your life matters. Does your friend over here, does their life matter? Don't all lives matter? As humans, we have a responsibility to everybody. And if this is your family value as well, this is important, right? We have a responsibility to be kind and compassionate to all lives, all humans, right? And that's a really important thing to talk about with your kids, right? Black lives do matter, all lives matter. And it's really important that we treat people with equality and respect and care and compassion. So I'm not sure if that fully answers your question, but I think we've got to talk to them about how everybody matters. Everybody matters, even if some of the leaders do not act that way. This is about our family. This is about what we believe, right? And I want you to be the best human being you can be. When you are an adult in this crazy, complicated world, I want you to see everybody as worthy of love and attention, right? And understanding more than anything. And I think as white people, we really need to understand what it's like. And they've been telling us over and over and over again what it's like. We need to now go and do the research and learn what it's like, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and
So
I think that's important, like you said, to bring it back to, and you said this a time and time again, bring it back to your family, bring it back to your own values, and make sure that those are the values that you're discussing with your child, and that they know, like, okay, we believe this XYZ in our family. Um and um and you've talked a lot about listening, and slowing down a little bit and being open to
yeah,
these conversations. And I think all of those things are really important to give our children a sense of self, but then also feel empowered and like, okay, someone is listening to me and my voice does matter. And we can talk about this, that there isn't a taboo topic, and that we can just
Yeah.
dive in as a family and work towards being kind to people.
Yes, and this isn't just about this election, which is the great
Right.
thing is that if you can start this now, what it does is it allows your child to feel valued, validated, that their words, their thoughts, their opinions matter, and that you'll listen to them. And that just means that they're going to get the message that they are worthy, they're valuable, and loved and lovable. And that is what helps our kids thrive in this world. When they have that kind of foundation with parents that really listen to them, don't pick fights with them, don't make fun of them or criticize them for their own thoughts, opinions, and ideas.
Mm.
Whoa, that is a game changer. That is a new way of showing up for your family and for your kiddos who we want to have the best possible foundation to go into the world that is awaiting them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Robin, for being here with us today to talk about some of these hard conversations and to talk about sort of our crazy world right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Thank you also to all our viewers and listeners for joining us today. Make sure that you visit ChesapeakeFamily.com for up-to-date local information on health, family, and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on ChesapeakeFamily.com in both video and podcast format. I'm Janet Jefferson with Third Floor Views and Chesapeake Family Life. Thank you so much.